Hello everyone and welcome back to Conquest Conundrums, the series where I show you guys how to use different aspects of the Conquest Reforged mod. In today's episode, I'm going to be introducing the practice of block palettes within Minecraft and Conquest Reforged. So without further ado, let's get right into this episode. Alright guys, so getting into the tutorial part of this video, I want to kind of explain how block palettes work and kind of the thought process behind them. I've got some good examples here which I can use to kind of illustrate my points. And yeah, I hope you guys find this useful. So block palettes, much like gradients, kind of follow a kind of like transition. So a simple one would be to transition from a dark to a light color. So for example, as indicated by the rainbow wall here, you know, you have your red transitioning to orange, yellow, green, blue. Very basic transition, but it's essentially this kind of process. This is essentially how it works. So as you can see with these examples here, we have various different transitions in block palettes. So the idea here was to transition from a kind of lighter mortar block using kind of this lime mortar masonry to the cliffstone cobble, to small limestone cobbles and limestone cobble. Now, this transition here might look quite harsh, however, because the stones of the cliffstone cobble are quite small, the transition works, and also color-wise, from a distance and when applied to builds like on Chakov, because this is a palette we use on Chakov, it works really well. Another palette you can use is something like this. So here we have a white plaster palette. This consists of birch wood, worn white plaster, and white plaster. Now, the good thing about this is this palette relies quite heavily on worn plaster CTM texture variation. So this means that every now and again, the worn plaster will have a cool worn plaster texture. So what this means is you can essentially have a wall, you know, what I do is I'll start with worn white plaster, and then where there's big sections, I will kind of replace them with white plaster to kind of make it look less full. Or if you have sections where, you know, you need to add in, say there's like kind of a big build up here and you don't want it and you want to add a new texture, you can add things like the birch wood, which looks quite harsh, but trust me, when it's in situ and on actual build, it can look really good. Again, so over here we have some natural palettes. So these rely on, while the others kind of rely on like a drip gradient, which is something that will be covered in a future Conquest Conundrums episode, when I look at gradients and such, these ones rely on kind of a noise. So as you can see here, we've got two basic palettes. We have a grass palette and we have a path palette. Now these are two things that I use on Chakov quite a bit because they work really well together. The idea with this grass palette again is all the blocks look kind of similar. It's clear that tiger grass, or the tiger, I don't know how to pronounce it, it has a darker texture. The clovered grass is kind of in the middle. It's partially light, partially dark, a bit like the grass, with the grass being the lightest texture. So it allows you to kind of get this really cool transition. Now you can group them up in clumps, or you can use a noise kind of gradient, which would essentially be just randomly applying the grass. That's what I do, especially when it's just kind of these free blocks. It's good just the noise, and it adds a nice bit of variation. That plus biome texturing and stuff, if you want to do that, looks really good. Again, moving on, we have a path palette here. So we have 3 blocks making up the main palette. We have a light to dark transition. These blocks are really nice. We've got the rocky sandy soil, the dark sandy soil, the brown gravel, and to have the kind of edge of the path, we have mossy soil and cushion moss covered loamy dirt. Now, these look really good together. There are plenty of other blocks you can use for a path palette, obviously. Again, I'm going to do a video on roads and paths in the future, hopefully a tutorial, and there's also going to be Conquest Conundrums talking about road gradients and stuff and applications of gradients in the future, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, so again, it's all about testing and kind of looking at the blocks that we have available. You know, if we go over to the grass and dirt section, there are so many blocks here. You know, you can make really cool gradients and, you know, color combinations and things like that just by having a play around and looking at these blocks. You know, at a glance, I'm realizing I'm saying I know a lot. My bad. So at a glance, you know, you could mix sandy soil with clay-rich mud and brown earth, and you've immediately got a very simple palette there. If you wanted to make it a little bit more complex, you know, you could get and incorporate these 3 blocks as well. So we have the rocky sandy soil, dark sandy soil, brown gravel transitioning into is that meant to be sandy soil? Yeah, okay, sandy soil, with Clay Rich Mud and the Brown Earth. And immediately there we have a cool palette that could be used for paths, it could be used for muddy paths, it could even be used for water features. Who knows? And yeah, you can really have a play around, and that's what it's all about. You've really got to experiment and kind of test and find things that really work for you. Anyways, I hope you all found this tutorial useful. Block palettes will appear frequently in my future tutorials and Conquest Conundrums installments, so make sure to experiment with all the blocks that Conquest Reforged has to offer to get familiar with block palettes. Make sure to subscribe, like, and comment down below. I also have a Discord server which you should totally join. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.